Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah. We're holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and Mirz Hashem today we will be learning Daf Tzadik Zayin Amud Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today on the very top line of the Shulchan Aruch on Daf Tzadik Zayin Amud Aleph, Siman Shin Hey Sif Chaf. Our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael Hanesunim Batzaru Bashivya Ha'imdim Bein Bayom Ubein Bayabasha Hamakim Yerachem Aleihem V'Yaitzia Mitzar Lervacha Me'afela La'ero Mishibud L'Geula Hashta Bagala V'Zban Kariv and Emar Amein. Our learning should be a schus for Shalema from Moshe ben Esther Fradel Yitzchak ben Tzion ben Dusha Tzvi ben Leah Miriam Chavadas Bas Vezel Serel Dvar Bas Shashabina and Rivka Bas Shira Leah. They should have a refuah Shalema B'Sar Shar Chayle Yisrael. Our learning should also be a schus for Yonasan ben Michal, Yoel ben Michal, together with all of our other brothers and sisters that find themselves in harm's way. The Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over them and bring them all home safely. Okay, says the Mechaber Sif Chaf. Mutter loymar le'ena Yehudi lachloiv behemtoi b'Shabbos. You are allowed to instruct an Eina Yehudi to milk your animal on Shabbos. So somebody has a cow, the cow needs to be milked. Now the nature of an animal is that if you have a female animal that is producing milk, if you do not milk the animal becomes engorged with milk. It is very painful. That would cause tsar balechayim. Now, to milk an animal on Shabbos would be an issa daraisa. Why is it an issa daraisa? Because it's the malacha of mifarek, extracting something from something else, which is its container. This is a tolada of the Av Malacha of Dush. What's Dush? Dush is threshing, when you thresh grain. Now, what do you do when you thresh grain? So you have a wheat kernel. The kernel of wheat, the edible part, the part that we grind up to make flour out of, is the kernel that is contained inside the chaff. When you go to thresh your wheat, you pound it, you break up the chaff, and you extract the kernels from the chaff. So that's dush. A tolada is mefarek. Mefarek is any time you have an item that is contained within something else and you extract it. That is the tolada of mefarek. It's an issa daraisa. Now, when you milk a cow, you have milk that is contained within the animal. It's contained within the udder of the animal. When you milk the cow, you're performing the malacha of mefarek. That would be an issa daraisa. Now, amira la'akum on mefarek, instructing an Eina Yehudi to do this, is only a derabanan, because amira la'akum is an issa derabanan. So the Mechaber is ruling over here. You're allowed to do amira la'akum on an issa daraisa, right? Amir la'akum is usually an issa derabanan, but you're doing amir la'akum on an issa daraisa. You're instructing the Eina Yehudi to perform the malacha of mefarek. We're going to allow you to do that so that you could alleviate the suffering of the animal, because like we learned yesterday, tsar balechayim is a daraisa. So midaraisa, you're required to alleviate the suffering of the animal, so you could do amir la'akum on the daraisa of mefarek in order to alleviate the suffering of the animal. Mutter loyma le'eina Yehudi lach loiv behemtoi b'Shabbos mishum tsar balechayim sha'acholov mitzara, because the milk is causing pain and suffering to the animal. V'acholov aser boi b'yom. However, the milk is going to be aser for use on Shabbos. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. It says the Mishnah Berurah is Katnayin Aleph. Mutter loymar. V'hu adin, the same halacha would apply. The mutter mishum tsar balechayim loymar le'eina Yehudi lahamrois ha'avozois. Sometimes you have domesticated fowl. So you could have chickens, avozin are geese. You could have domesticated geese. Somebody is raising geese. And these geese do not eat by themselves. They were domesticated, they were raised by people, and they're accustomed to being fed. Now, sometimes you want to feed the geese a lot of food because you want to fatten them up. So lahamrois means to force feed the geese. Now, force feeding an animal, we're going to learn later in Siman Shin Chaf Daled Bezos Hashem Yisparach, force feeding an animal on Shabbos is usually aser mishum tirchi yisera. It's an issa d'rabanan. It's an inappropriate level of tircha, of exertion, on Shabbos, because to force feed an animal takes work. The animal is fighting against you. The animal doesn't want to eat that much. You have to take the food and stuff it in the animal's mouth. So that's an inappropriate level of exertion on Shabbos. It's an Issa D'Rabbanan. What the Mishnah Berurah is telling you over here is that Huadin, the same halacha that we're learning here, that you could instruct an Eina Yehudi to do mafarik and milk an animal. For Huadin, the same halacha would apply. The mutter b'shum tzar b'alachayim loymer le'Eina Yehudi lahamreis ha'avazos. You could instruct an Eina Yehudi to force feed geese shehurgalu kfar b'hamra if these geese are accustomed to being fed this way. Ve'ein yichel mushuv lechol ba'atzman. Okay, we're not farmers. We don't get this. But apparently there was a metzius that there are geese that are used to being force-fed. And if you don't catch the geese and force-feed them, they're not going to eat. Now, if they're not going to eat, obviously they're going to suffer. It's Tsar Balachayim. So you could instruct an Eina Yehudi to go force-feed the geese on Shabbos. But in such a scenario, it would only be mutter to do this once a day. Dirshu like a Tsar Balachayim, because as long as you feed them once a day, there's no longer any Tsar Balachayim that you need to alleviate in order to force feed them a second time. Now, one thing we should realize, the heter of the Mechaber was to do Amir La'akum on a Daraisa. The heter of the Mechaber was to do Amir La'akum to tell an Eina Yehudi to milk a cow. Milking a cow is an Issa Daraisa. What the Mishnah Berurah is talking about over here is really a shvus to shvus. It's Amir La'akum to tell the Eina Yehudi to be over an Issa D'Rabbanan of force feeding an animal, which is a Terchi Yisera. Terchi Yisera is a D'Rabbanan. So this is a notch down from what the Mechaber was matir. And therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, Umash B'Sham, the implication is, in this Chuvas Ramah, where he's bringing this from, the Ileka Eina Yehudi, if you didn't have an Eina Yehudi available to go force feed the geese, Shari HaHamra al Yidei Yisrael. This would really be mutter even for a Yid to do. And again, the reason is because now it's an Issa D'Rabbanan. Now you're doing an Issa D'Rabbanan to alleviate the suffering of an animal. This is something that we already learned about yesterday. Yesterday we said that if an animal is stuck in the water, you could go bring a mattress and put it into the water in order to create a ramp for the animal to come out. Now, we said that putting the mattress in the water is an Issa D'Rabbanan. It's Bittul Kli Mehechanoi, which is an Issa D'Rabbanan. So we were matter Issa D'Rabbanan yesterday already for Tsar Balachayim. That's the same thing that we're doing over here. We're being matter at Issa D'Rabbanan of force-feeding the geese in order to alleviate its suffering. So first, the Mishnah Berurah brought from the Chuvas Ramah that it's mutter al yidei Eina Yehudi. That's a shvus to shvus. It's a double D'Rabbanan. Now he's saying that really it's mashma from the Chuvas Ramah that if you don't have a guy, you can even do it by yourself. Even though this is an Issa D'Rabbanan, but over here, since the geese are not going to eat by themselves and they're going to suffer, it's going to be mutter b'shum tzar b'alechayim. The toiv lasas ayidei katan. But even if you don't have an Eina Yehudi, it would be better to have a katan do it. So even though, again, this is an Issa D'Rabbanan, but we're not going to be so quick to be matir the Issa D'Rabbanan mishum tzar b'alechayim if there's another way out. So if there's an Eina Yehudi, use an Eina Yehudi and make it a shvus to shvus. If you don't have an Eina Yehudi, use a cotton if you could use a cotton. If all else fails, so then you could do it even by yourself. Now the Mishnah Berurah goes back into the question of milking for a moment. He brings down from the Rambam, Kosav Rambam, the Rambam writes, Ha'cholev l'soich kli. If somebody milks an animal into a keli, so you're milking the animal into a bucket. So the milk is coming out of the cow, going into the bucket. Chayiv. That's an Issa D'Oraisa. Now, if you take a look at the Sharet Tzion, Ois Cotton Samach Hey, he says, what's the Issa D'Oraisa? Like I told you, Mishum Mefarik, Du Talada Dadash. This is classic Mefarik. You are extracting the milk from the udder of the cow. Okay. L'soich oichel, however, let's say you don't milk from the cow into a bucket. Let's say you milk the milk onto a meichel, onto food. So somebody has a bowl of cereal. He's got a bowl of Cheerios, and he wants to have Cheerios with milk. So he takes the bowl to the cow, and he milks the cow onto his Cheerios. So he's milking, but he's not milking into a bucket. He's milking onto food. Very interesting. Says the Rambam, L'soich oichel, if you milk onto a food, potter. This would only be an Issa D'Rabbanan, not an Issa D'Oraisa. Now, if you take a look at the Shari Tzirit Ois Katan Samach Vav, he says, why is this? The mashke habola oichel ka oichel dami. Because a mashke that goes onto a food is not considered a beverage, it's considered a food. What's at work over here? So let's explain this. This is all the malacha of mefarik. Now, in order for something to be an issa d'oraisa of mefarik, you have to extract an item from a different type of item that is containing it. Now, let's take a look at the items that we're dealing with here. We're dealing with milk, and we're dealing with cow, right? The milk is inside the cow, or goat, whatever animal it is. Now, the animal, especially if it's an animal that's oimid la'achila, if you have a cow, it's one day you're going to shecht it, and you're going to make ribeyes out of it. So we look at the cow, and we look at the cow as a meichel. The cow is a type of food, even though right now it's living and breathing and walking around, but it's oimid la'achila. You look at the cow, you see rib steaks. So the cow is a meichel. The milk is a mashke. The milk is a beverage. It's not a meichel. It's a mashke. It's a beverage. When you go ahead and you milk the cow, you're doing mefarik because you're extracting a mashke from the meichel. You're extracting a beverage from a food that is containing it. Okay, that's mefarik 101. That's an issa d'oraisa. But if you milk the cow onto your so that's if you milk the cow into a bucket. If you milk the cow into a bucket, the cow, Michael, was containing the milk. You milk the cow into a bucket. Now you have a bucket of a mashke. You have a bucket of a beverage, of milk. So, Michael, you extract mashke, that's Mefarik 101, that's in Issa D'Oraisa. But if you take your bowl of Cheerios and you bring your bowl of Cheerios to the cow and you milk the cow onto the Cheerios, then Cheerios, you milk it onto the Cheerios, you take it to your kitchen table to eat it. Now you have a bowl of Michael. You don't have a bowl of Michael Cheerios blended with milk mashke. No, it's a food. A bowl of Cheerios is a Michael. Right? Cheerios and milk is a meichel. It's not considered a mashke and a meichel. Well, in that case, you weren't mefarik a mashke from a meichel. You were mefarik a meichel from a meichel. At no point was the milk considered a beverage. While the milk is inside the cow, it's part of the cow. Now you extract from the cow right onto your Cheerios, it's weiter a meichel. Because it's part of the Cheerios and milk. It's a meichel. That's not mefarik d'oraisa. That's only an isser d'Rabbanan. That's why the Rambam says, again, let's see it inside over here in the Mishnah Berurah. Kasav Rambam, ha'chaylev l'soich keli. If you milk the animal into a keli, into a bucket, chayiv. Chayiv means, if you did it b'shogeg, you chayiv chatas. This is isser d'oraisa. L'soich oichel, but if you milk the cow into a meichel, into food, potter. What does potter mean in Hilchos Shabbos? Potter aval aser. You're exempt, but it is also to do, meaning it's an issa d'Rabbanan. Why? Because it's not real mefarik. You took a meichel out of a meichel. That's not real mefarik. But this is an issa d'Rabbanan. D'chol peturei de Shabbos potter aval aser, because potter in Hilchos Shabbos always means potter aval aser. Now, that's as far as the act of milking. Now, how about the milk? However, don't think that if you milk the cow onto your Cheerios, you're going to be able to sit down and eat Cheerios and milk for breakfast on Shabbos morning. You're not going to be able to. You know why? Because the milk is prohibited for use on Shabbos. Even if you milked it directly onto your Cheerios. Why? Because it's very nice that I'm telling you that when the cow is walking around, we look at it as a pile of rib steaks, so we look at it as a meichel. But the bottom line is the cow royal achila? No, it's b'chus shchita. In order to be matter the animal for eating purposes, you have to shecht it, you have to slaughter it, right? So on Erev Shabbos, Ben Hashmoshes, when Shabbos came in at Ben Hashmoshes, what was the status of this animal? It's a balchai. A balchai is muktzah. What was the status of the milk? The milk is part of the animal. So the milk was also muktzah. Kevin dis katzoyle ben hashmoshes is katzoyle kula yuma. Once the milk was muktzah at ben hashmoshes, when Shabbos comes in, the milk is going to remain muktzah. So it's very nice that you milk the animal into your bowl of Cheerios, but you have muktzah milk. So the milk is going to be aser, heavy muktzah. He brings this down from the Magen Avram. Now it happens to be that this topic of the milk being muktzah is very complex. The complexities of it are beyond the scope of what we can do here in this shir, but it's a very interesting shaila whether or not migoidis katsoyle ben hashmoshes is katsoyle kula yuma would apply to the milk or not. You could look at the Achrayim. It's a very interesting topic. Okay, let's go back to the Mechaber. I'm not sure if I read this or not. End of the second line here. V'hacholav aser boy b'yoyim. Even if the Eina Yehudi goes ahead and milks the milk is going to be aser for the entirety of Shabbos. Is cut in ayin beis. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Mishkom mashkin shezavu miperois ha'oimdim lischita. The milk is going to be aser. So the Mishnah Berurah just told us from the Magen Avram before that even if you go ahead and milk the milk into your bowl of Cheerios, right? So you didn't do an isser, the milk is still going to be aser because of muktzah. The Mechaber is telling us that the milk is going to be aser by b'yayim, even if it ain't a Yehudi comes and goes ahead and milks it. There's another reason why the milk is aser. Misham mashkim shezavu miperois ha'oimdim l'schita, the karmel of Siman Shin Chaf Sif Aleph to Asurin. We're going to learn Mir Hashem Bez Hashem Yisparach later on in Siman Shin Chaf. Let's say you have an orange, and you have juicing oranges. So you have a bowl of oranges that you intend one day on going ahead and juicing. Or you have nice juicy grapes that you intend on pressing and making grape juice. And over the course of Shabbos, juice oozes out of these fruits of its own accord. You didn't go ahead and milk it. You didn't do any isser over here. It oozed out by itself. Are you allowed to take that orange juice or that grape juice and drink it on Shabbos? You're not. Why? Because when you have fruit that is oimid l'schita, when you have fruit that is, your intention is to use this fruit for pressing purposes, to press out the juice that comes out on its own is aser. This is a gzeira. The gzeira is gzeira shema yischatu shema yavai l'sachtoi b'Shabbos. We're afraid if we're going to allow you to drink the grape juice that comes out of the grapes on its own, you might say, ooh, this grape juice is delicious. Now you might go ahead and you might take the grapes and you might squeeze them. So even the juice that oozes out on their own on Shabbos, the juice is aser. So too over here, says the Mechaber. You have an Eina Yehudi, you instructed an Eina Yehudi to milk the cow on Shabbos. Did the Eina Yehudi do anything wrong? No, the Eina Yehudi didn't do anything wrong. But all of the milk is going to be aser for use on Shabbos because of the gzeira shema yavai l'sachtoi b'Shabbos. If we're going to allow you to use the milk, you might come to get up and milk a cow on Shabbos. So all of that milk is aser. Now, I'm just puzzled. I didn't pick it up earlier. So it seems that we have two reasons now why the milk is aser. One reason the milk is aser is because of an isser muktzah. And another reason it's aser is because of the gzeira sheba yava l'sachtoi. Okay, I have to think on that for a bit. Okay. V'hanami laha damya. This is similar to the case of the juice that oozes out of the fruit on its own. Okay, so let's go back here to the Mechaber, third line down, beginning of the line. So far the Mechaber told us essentially two halachas. The Mechaber told us you're allowed to instruct an Eina Yehudi to milk your animal on Shabbos. Milking is an Issa D'Oraisa. You're allowed to instruct an Eina Yehudi to do it. You're allowed to do Amir La'akum. Why? Because of Tzar Balechayim. Now, says the Mechaber, V'yesh Oimrim, there are those that say, and he brings this down from Rabbeinu Yoina, V'yesh oimrim shetzarech liknoisai min ha'eina Yehudi b'davar mu'at. There are those that say that after Shabbos, you should purchase the milk from the Eina Yehudi for a davar mu'at, for a tiny amount. And if you take a look at the Bir Halacha Dibra Maskal b'davar mu'at, the Chavetz Chaim says, what does this mean, a davar mu'at? Hainu afilu b'tapuach. Even give him an apple. Or he says, v'afilu ein a shava pruta. Even for less than a shava pruta, give him a penny. But there are those that say that, yeah, you could instruct the Eina Yehudi to go ahead and do the Issa Daraisa of Mefarek to alleviate the suffering of the animal. Mishum Tzar Be'al Chaim. We're going to be matter that. But there are those that say that you should, after Shabbos, you should buy the milk from the Eina Yehudi. Why, says the Mechaber? Shelo yeh nireh kechaylev l'tzarech Yisrael. Optics. We don't want this to look like that the Eina Yehudi was doing the Issa Daraisa of Mefarek on Shabbos for you. It's too uncomfortably close to the real Amir La'akum that is an Issa Darabanan, right? I mean, that's what this is. This is Amir La'akum 101. You're instructing an Eina Yehudi to do a Malacha Daraisa on Shabbos. Okay, we're being matter because of Tzar B'alei Chaim. But there are those that say, you know what? Pay the Eina Yehudi epis. Give him an apple. Give him a couple of pennies after Shabbos so that you're buying the milk from him. What does that do? Well, now we could say Nokri Adaita den Avshekavad. Now it looks like the guy did it for himself, right? He milked the milk and he sold the milk. He made 2 cents on it. He got an apple for it. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Cotton, Ayin Gimel. V'yesham Tzarech Sfir Lahu. These man the Amram hold the Amir Lak Loiv Loihutter Klal. We're not going to be matir the Amir La'akom on this Issa Daraisa, Ki im kishein Yehudi chaylev l'tarech atzmai. We want it to be Nokri Adaita den Avshei Ka'avad, V'Yisrael kaina achar Shabbos b'menu b'davar mu'at. So he's milking the animal for his own purposes. He's going to make money. He knows the Yid is going to buy the milk. The Kaf HaChaim brings down that really what you should do is, you should tell the guy, you know what, go out and milk the cow. After you milk the cow, leave the bucket here in my kitchen. Maybe I'll buy it from you after Shabbos. Maybe I want it. So it's the guy is doing it for himself. But says the Mishnah Berurah, ha'olam nehagin kasfar arishayna. The Welt is noyeg, like the first opinion, that you don't need to do this, you don't need to buy it back. And again, it's mutter b'shem tzar b'alei chaim. The b'shem tzar b'alei chaim shavi amir lein yudi lachloiv bein elei yidum in a shuk. And it doesn't matter if you call in a guy, a stranger from the street, and you instruct him to milk your cow. Ubein lahashvachai sheniskaris l'chalashana l'malachtai, or it's your own house people, your house servants, your maids, your non-Jewish maids, etc. You can have them do it also. The ein limchais biyadam, and you don't have to object. Umekamakim tov sheyachlev ein Yehudi l'seichaychel, but the best thing would be have the Eina Yehudi do it in a way where it's only an Issa D'Rabbanan, right? The Rambam said if they milk it into a bowl of Cheerios, it's an Issa D'Rabbanan. It's not an Issa D'Raisa. Tavalei shvus d'shvus, because now you're making it a shvus d'shvus. The truth is, the Mishnah Berurah doesn't write it straight out, but l'chayri this would be a shvus d'shvus b'makom mitzvah, which we're going to learn later. We're matir shvus d'shvus b'makom mitzvah. Why is it b'makom mitzvah? Because it's a mitzvah to alleviate the suffering of the animal, right? We learned that from the halacha of prika, the chiv that you have to unload an animal that's suffering under its load. So l'chayra, this would be a shvus b'makom mitzvah. It's a mir la'akum on in the rabbanon, because the akum is milking it into a meichel, so it's not real mefarik. It's only the iser mefarik rabbanon, and it's b'makom mitzvah mishum tzar b'alei chaim. So, in other words, what you take out from this is, remember, yes, we're willing to be matter things mishum tzar b'alei chaim. But let's make the heter, let's be matir as little as we have to be matir. Don't run to be matir amir la'akum mamish on a daraisa, be matir amir la'akum on a darabanan. Same thing with force feeding the geese, right? That's even only an Issa D'Rabbanan. Okay, why should we run to be matir to allow you to do an Issa D'Rabbanan mishum tzar b'alei chaim if you could do it through the agency of Eina Yehudi and make it a shvus d'shvus, or at least do it al yedei cotton? So we don't want to be matir. We don't have to be matir. We want to be matir as little as possible. Okay, says the Mechaber Sif Chaf Aleph. Gvinois, cheese. Now let's talk about cheese for a moment. Making cheese, interestingly enough, according to the Rambam, can entail 2 Isurei Daraisa. What happens when you make cheese? So you take milk and you put in something like rennet, you put in a medium that is going to cause the milk to curdle. Now, what happens when the milk curdles? When the milk curdles, essentially what you're doing is you're separating solids from the liquid. You have a liquid, you're putting in a medium that causes the solids to curdle. So you're kind of like separating. So this could be burr, says the Rambam. Now, that's still not cheese. That's more something that looks like a very loose cottage cheese. But you want cheddar cheese. You want American cheese, which is not really cheese. You want Swiss cheese, right? You want a block of cheese. How do you get that? Well, you take the curds and you press the curds together and they dry and they form a block. That, says the Rambam, is boine. That is a form of construction, a form of building. You're taking separate pieces and you're building them into a chunk. So that's boine. So here you have burr and you have boine. So cheese making could involve at least 2 Isurei Daraisa. Says the Mechaber, Gvinois she'oisois hashvachos me'atzman me'cholov shel Yisrael. You have some non-Jewish maids in the home. They went and they took your milk. Right? You have a cow. The cow is producing milk. It's yours. They went ahead and they took your milk, and of their own volition, they went ahead and they made cheese. Now, this could involve lots of different problems over here, because you have an Eina Yehudi who's doing malacha with your not merchandise, but with your possessions, your items. They're taking things that belong to you, and they're performing Isurei Daraisa. Now, we learned earlier in Siman Reishai and Vav, we learned that let's say an Eina Yehudi comes, and an Eina Yehudi sees Friday night that you're sitting and you're being Mavisedra, and you're like this because you're being Mavisedra in the dark. So you have a good Eina Yehudi Eved. He realizes that you need light. He says, come on, I'll go make you a fire. He takes your wood, and he takes your matches, and your kindling, and he goes and he makes a fire. So he's making a fire for you, using your possessions. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you're mechuyev to stop him. We learned in Reishai and Vav. You're mechuyev to stop him. If you have to, you throw him out of your house. You're mechuyev to stop him from doing that. So now, if these shvachos would be making the cheese for you, right? If they're taking your milk and they know that you want cheese and they're going and making cheese for you, you're mechuyev to stop them. You're mechuyev to be moicha. You have to object. Over here, according to the first way the Mishnah Berurah is going to understand this mechaber, what the mechaber is saying is like this: Gvinoi she'oisais hashvachos me'atzman. If the shifcha went and you didn't ask her, and you're not sitting and eating breakfast, so that the shifcha says, "Oh, you probably want some cheese with your challah." No, it's the middle of the day. You're sitting, whatever. It's after the Suda. It's Nachon Suda, Shabbos afternoon, and you're sitting and you're chazering that week's Dirshu, and the shifcha has time on her hands, so she goes and she takes milk and she's making cheese. Says the Mechaber, Gvinoi she'asais hashvachos me'atzman me'cholov shel Yisrael. The cheeses that the shifchos went ahead and made, absolutely of their own volition, with no instruction from you, using your milk, mutter, you're not mechuyev to stop them. That's the way the Mishnah Berurah learns in the first pshat. Mutter means you're not mechuyev to stop them. It's permissible for you to allow them to do it. You're not mechuyev to stop them. Why? Because you didn't tell them to do this. Now, the Mishnah Berurah himself is going to bring down the Gra, the El Yerabah, that says that this is very, very difficult to understand. Now, I wrote down here somewhere the lashon of the Shulchan Aruch Harav. Yeah, the Shulchan Aruch Harav says The reason for this is shebevadai miskavnois letoivois atzmon. The Levush says that what the rationale of the mechaber is that when you see the shifka doing this, she's not doing it for you. She's doing it for her own purposes. Why would she take your milk and do it for her own purposes? It's not that she's taking your milk and making cheese because she wants cheese. Who gave her the permission to do that? I mean, she's not just taking your milk and making cheese because she wants a cheese omelet on Shabbos morning. No, says the Levush, they're doing it miskavnes l'tovas atzman. Why? Limtzoi chen be'enei Yisrael. The shivcha sees a nice bucket of milk. She sees that there's plenty of milk in the refrigerator. So she says to herself, what could I do for my Adain? What could I do for my master that will make him happy? Why do I want to make him happy? Not because I want him to be happy, because I want him to like me, right? I want continued employment, so I want my boss to be happy with me. So she's going and she's making cheese for what purpose? To ingratiate herself with her master. That's why she's doing it. That's how the Levush explains this, the Shulchan Aruch Harav. That's how the Shulchan Aruch Harav explains this mechaber. You're allowed to let them do it. You don't have to object. Because you didn't tell them to do it. And the pashtus is that if you didn't tell them to do it, they're not doing it for you. They're doing it for their own purposes. They're doing it for themselves so that you should be happy with them. Says the Mishnah Berurah over here, Ois cut $9. Mutter kevan hainu. The reason for this heter is because we could assume that they're doing it for their own purposes. Okay, but says the Mishnah Berurah, take a look at the other achronim who take great issue with this. They argue on this. They're taking your milk, and the Yid sees what they're doing. And the Yid is quiet about it. Shtika koida. You see what she's doing. You're not objecting. That means that you're maskim, right? And she sees that you're maskim to what she's doing. So mastama daita di Yisrael kavta. I say, what? She's doing it for herself. No. She knows that you know that she's making cheese out of your milk, and she sees that you're okay with it. That means she's doing it for you. She's not doing it for herself. Sheyedas, shenichale bazeh. She knows that you're going to be happy with it. You're splitting hairs. You're telling me, yeah, she knows that you're happy with it, but she's not doing it to make you happy. She's doing it to make you happy for her own purposes, because it's good for her that you should be happy. Say the Achrayim, that means that she's doing it for you. They're very unhappy with this heter. The Achrayim say, even if she would take the milk, and she would take the milk to her own house, and make the cheese in her own house, you would have to stop her. We learned this in Reish Ayin Vav also. This was in Reish Ayin Vav. Reish Ayin Vav. Mishnah Berurah. Ois cotton Yud Aleph. On Nun Vav Amen Aleph. The Mishnah Berurah says, Im nizdamen li Yisrael. If it would happen that a Yid if he sees that a guy wants to make a fire for him, if a Yid goes to visit his Eini Yehudi's quarters and he sees the Eini Yehudi using his wood to go make a fire, even though it's being done in the quarters of the Eini Yehudi, the Yid is mechuyev to stop him. He's doing malacha with your possessions. So even if he's doing it in the bias of the Eini Yehudi, you're mechuyev to stop him. So say the Achrayim, even if the Shivcha Eini Yehudis takes your milk, and she's making cheese in her own home, you're mechuyev to stop her. The Cholshken she yises at Bebeis Yisrael. Certainly it's also if she's doing it in the Beis Yisrael. The Gra takes issues with this psak for other reasons as well. The El Yerabba and the Pri Begadim have a different way of learning this mechaber. Ubel Yerabu Pri Megadim Eskimu, they agree the Kavanas HaShulchan Aruch Hu, that the intent, the Kavan of the Shulchan Aruch Hu, when the Shulchan Aruch said mutter, was not that it's mutter to allow the shivcha to do it and you're not mechuyev to stop her. No, the Kavan of the Shulchan Aruch was rak im asasa lepa'amim derech mikra. If once in a while the shivcha eini Yehudis went ahead and she took your milk on Shabbos and she made cheese, shemutter achar Shabbos lehanos mehem. You're allowed to use the cheese after Shabbos. Mutter means you could have a cheese omelet on Sunday morning from the cheese that the Shivka Eini Yehudis made out of your milk on Shabbos. But if every Shabbos she's taking your milk and she's making cheese out of it, mechuyev limchos, you're mechuyev to object and stop her from doing it. Now, this is also somewhat complex. I'm not sure what the heter that the Mechaber is giving you, according to the El Yerabah and the Pri Megadim is. What exactly is this heter? If a guy does malacha for you on Shabbos, the fruits of those labors are mutter after Shabbos, after K'dei Sheyaseh, right? Once the amount of time that it could have been accomplished on Motzei Shabbos passes, you're allowed to use it. So I'm not sure exactly, according to this, what the Mechaber is being matter. Okay, let's go back to Sif Chav Beis, says the Mechaber. Mi sheyesh lo nar eini Yehudi. Somebody has a nar, an eini Yehudi young fellow who works for him. I don't know, I guess this is like a farmhand or a stable hand. Mi sheyesh lo nar eini Yehudi. And the nar eini Yehudi wants to take one of your animals and bring it to the trough where it could drink. Now, there's two ways you could do that. The stable hand could take a rope, and lead the animal and go take the animal to the trough to drink. Or there's a more fun and exciting way he could do it. If it's a horse, he could get up on the horse and he could ride the horse and take the horse to the trough so the horse could drink, right? So he could lead the horse to the trough to drink, or he could climb up on the animal and ride the horse to drink. Now, this stable hand wants to ride the horse. He's riding the horse to the trough to take the horse to drink. Now, why are we discussing this? What's the potential problem? Well, you, the owner of the horse, have a chiyuv of shvisas behemtoi. You're mechuyev to make sure that your animal doesn't do malacha on Shabbos. One of the malachas that we've discussed over and over again for an animal is hoitzah, right? Bameh behema yoitza, right? What is the animal allowed to go out wearing on Shabbos? You're not allowed to have your animal go out carrying a burden on Shabbos, because that would be the animal performing the malacha of hoitzah. You have to stop the animal because it's shvisas behemtoi, right? Now the stable hand is going to ride the horse. Do we look at the person as being a masui? Does this mean that the horse is carrying the person, and therefore the horse can't go out to Rishos HaRabim carrying the person? Says the Mechaber, no, that's not a problem. You don't have to stop the stable hand and tell him, no, you can't ride the horse, because that means that the horse is carrying you. Why? Because there's a rule that a live being carries itself. We don't look at the person as being a burden on the animal. No. Chai noisei esasmai. A living being carries itself. Okay. However, if the stable hand is taking out the horse out to Rishos HaRabim to go take it to drink, and it's hot, so the stable hand takes off his jacket and throws his jacket on top of the horse, that's a problem. Because now the horse is carrying a masui. The horse is carrying his jacket. The jacket is not serving the purposes of the horse. It's not a malbush for the horse. It's not a takshit for the horse. It's a masui. So now that you can't have. Shvisas behemtoi. You have to stop the animal from doing malacha. V'loi shum davar. He can't put anything on the horse. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah. Oh, he's cutting ayin hey. Shachai noises atzmai return aloymar dein chalal ze shem masa. The person is not considered a burden. She yetzarch lamanim mipnei shvisas behemtoi. Now, this rule that chai noise es atzmai, right? You might extrapolate this in your mind. Oh, so that means I could go outside carrying my baby on Shabbos because my baby is a chai, my baby's a live being. Chai noise es atzmai. So if I carry my tinoch, my baby, out into Rosh Hashanah, I'm not carrying anything. Chai noise es atzmai. It should be mutter. It's mutter b'daraisa, but it's also b'darabanan. Valkein also la'adam lisa tinik b'Shabbos. It's an issa d'rabanan for someone to carry a child outside of Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos. But we don't put the issa d'rabanan on the animal and say, oh, the animal is doing an issa d'rabanan, carrying its rider, you're mechuyev al shvisas behemtai to stop it. That we do not say. But you have to make sure that the stable hand doesn't put his clothing on the horse. How about a saddle? Now remember, earlier on, we said an animal is not allowed to go out with a saddle on Shabbos. We said that an animal is allowed to go out with a merdas. If you put a saddle cloth on the animal before Shabbos, only if you put it on before Shabbos, we look at the merdas as a beged. Why? Because it's keeping the animal warm. A chamor could go out with a merdas because a chamor is cold. The merdas keeps him warm. So as long as you put it on before Shabbos so that it's clear that the chamor needs the merdas, he can go out with it on Shabbos. But an ukaf, a saddle, we said an animal's not allowed to go out bearing a saddle to Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos because the saddle is not a beged for the animal, so it's a burden. So the animal can't go out. Shvisas behemtai. Over here, if the nar is riding the horse on Shabbos, and therefore the nar puts on a saddle, the animal is allowed to go out with the saddle. Why? Not because the saddle now becomes a beged for the horse. The saddle is still not a beged for the horse. But now the saddle is serving the purposes of the rider. The saddle is now bottle to the rider. The rider is not a masoi, chai noisi es atzmai, and the saddle is serving the rider. So as far as the horse is concerned, the ukaf, the saddle is bottled to the rider, and the saddle is also not a masoi. Says the Mishnah Berurah, there's no problem with the saddle, the bottle because the saddle is bottled to the rider. The nar can't put anything else on the animal either. Let's say you were riding your horse on Erev Shabbos to go pick up some dips for Shabbos, so you had a saddle on the horse. You came back home and you got off the horse and you ran inside to go take a shower and finish preparing for Shabbos, and you left the saddle on the horse. Now it's Shabbos and there's a saddle on the horse, and the horse wants to walk out to Rosh Hashanah. So now the animal wants to walk out. You're not taking the horse out. The gate is open, and the horse wants to go for a spatzir. In Rosh Hashanah, he's wearing a saddle. The owner has to stop the animal from going out, because the horse can't go out with the saddle. It's carrying the saddle. So you have to stop it from going out. But let's say the horse is not performing hoitzah. There's nothing on the horse. And the horse wants to go for a spatzir. He writes a lasis chutz l'tchum. Even if the horse wants to go out, and you know that when the animal goes out for a walk, cows do this all the time, by the way. They leave their owners' fields, and they go for a spatzir. They'll go to pasture a mile away, and then they'll turn around and they'll come home in the evening. Animals do this all the time. When I was a kid, I went to camp, in a sleepaway camp during the summer in Pennsylvania, and where I was, it was in the middle of nowhere. And there were a lot of farms and everything around. And sometimes we would have a problem. We would go see what activities we have today, and we would see that we have baseball on field number 3. And we would go out to the baseball field, and we had to call the camp office. We're supposed to play baseball, but there are 4 cows that are grazing on the baseball field. So they would have to call the owner. The owner would come with a flatbed and with a cattle prod and get the animals up on the flatbed and drive them away. But this is what cows do. So if the animal wants to go out on Shabbos and you know it's going to go out at a tchum, I feel him right to loss is chutz l'tchum ein mechuyev l'manim is that you're not mechuyev to stop the animal. Varak lo yitzia biyadayim chutz l'tchum aser, to take the animal out of the tchum with your own hands, that would be aser. But if it wanders outside of the tchum, you're not mechuyev to stop him. We're going to stop over here. We'll continue next time with Sith Chav Gimel. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. This list of limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshua's refuahs parnasim shedukim to all in need. We should be zoichet to see the Bias Gal Tzedek. B'meherav Yameinu Amen. Be well.